Hello there, friends and neighbors. Thanks for coming back to my channel. This is me, Stella Hendricks, and today we are going to read Chapter 7 of Rhinestone Confidential by E.M. Starr. Alright. Chapter 7, Limelight. I heard barking down the hall and stepped out of the wardrobe room to see two poofs of fur running by, one golden and one coffee brown. The poofs were Pomeranians named Taylor and Coco, and they belonged to Shannon O'Keefe, our newest dancer. "Well, hello, I'm Shannon. Are you Wardrobe?" she asked in a heavy Kentucky drawl with a flash of white teeth. Her southern accent and warm personality engulfed me from the start. Shannon was a one-of-a-kind dancer and friend, as I was soon to discover. Previously, there was no featured dancer. Actually, there may have been, but I had no idea who it was. Now there was no doubt Shannon was the lead dancer, if not the star of the show. When Shannon took over the solo in the Good Golly Miss Molly number, I warned her of the change. It was a little difficult and it needed to be accomplished in very little time. "Oh, don't you worry about me, honey," she said. "Quick changes don't scare me in the least." She was right. The quick change went so smoothly I was shocked. I realized it wasn't me or the short time window that had made the change so difficult. It had been Trisha. Shannon made the change with time to spare. She stood there calmly and allowed me to pull the dress up over her slim hips and did not jerk and wiggle while I fastened it at the neck. She bent over and flipped off her tan shoes, pushed her foot first into the black shoe and then into the other, ran onto stage to do the number, sparkling with a fresh vitality that didn't ever seem to wane. But soon a new star would upstage her in the most delightful way. Shannon stopped by my room, holding her little dog Taylor in her arms. "Do you think you could make me a rhinestone collar and leash for him?" she asked with a big grin on her face. "Taylor's going in the show!" I watched his debut from the back of the room in between cues. The spotlight followed him as he trotted across the stage, Shannon holding the end of his sparkly new leash. She held him up and Taylor looked out at the audience, basking in their approval. The whole room let out a collective, "Aww," and the rest of the dancers, sweating and working their hardest, faded into the background. They could not compete with his fluffy cuteness. Shannon was extraordinarily limber, and the dance numbers were choreographed around her abilities. I took a break from sewing and went upstairs to watch rehearsals for the new numbers going into the show with Shannon at the lead. I joined the techs standing in the wings, also watching. "She's going to get called out if she doesn't start marking this number," one of them muttered, shaking his head. "Marking? What's marking?" I asked, for once not afraid of looking dumb. "It's when a dancer is just going through the motions and not dancing full out." As I watched, Shannon did an effortless spin and kicked so high I could swear her leg brushed her ear. Whoever was marking it was definitely not her. One of the dances choreographed especially for her was a fly number that had Shannon being lifted up and lowered to the stage wearing an invisible, hopefully, harness. The movements were coordinated from stage right by her husband, Freddie, after Harris decided the liability was too great to allow one of their stage techs to operate it. Freddie was also a performer, having been a member of Stupids, an acrobatic troupe from Sweden. Shannon and Freddie hosted many parties in their Reno home. In between shows one night, I squeezed past Shannon in the narrow passageway where the showroom cocktail servers placed their drink orders from the audience at the bar. "Hey guys, we're having a party tomorrow night after the show at my house," Shannon said. "I hope y'all can come. Here's the address." She handed a slip of paper to the showroom cashier. "Be sure and tell the rest." "We wouldn't miss it. I'll bring a homemade cheesecake." The cashier was known for her delicious baking and frequently brought them to work to share with the cast and crew. The next night, their house would be packed with cast, crew, and any random employee Shannon had befriended. Skiing and other possible injury-causing activities were not allowed for the dancers, and Shannon was antsy to do something fun on her day off. She and her husband started fishing for a hobby, and they went shopping for poles and lures. They invited us to meet them at Virginia Lake. I sat down on one of the hard metal benches and watched them cast their poles into the still lake, disturbed by a few ripples now and then. Freddie lit a cigarette, and I turned my head from the smoke. Suddenly, one of the lines went taut. "Woohoo! I got a big one!" Shannon squealed. Fishing was added to her list of talents. Shannon had recently lost her Adagio partner to AIDS. The duo had danced together for some time and they were highly attuned to each other's rhythms. "I miss him so much," her eyes filled with tears, "but I need to go forward and trust my new partner." She was extremely professional and even went on stage to perform with a broken toe one night, gritting through the pain to finish the show. Shannon had an Achilles heel, however, and unfortunately one night, I was the one to expose it. For the Prince number, which was choreographed to a medley of hits by Prince, Shannon danced on a set of wooden bars that were supported by the male dancers, who would alternate the bars to be uneven or parallel for Shannon to flip and twirl her body. For this number, everyone wore a mask. The boys wore a black mask tied onto their heads made with sheer fabric. Shannon wore a half mask with the eye holes cut out. My job was to hold the mask to her face while she placed the elastic around her head. Naturally, it was a very fast change. Shannon came running off stage and stood in front of her preset while I unhooked her corset and tossed it gently to the floor. She put her arms through the bra straps of her next costume while I moved behind her and grasped the back, hooking it in one swift move. Next, she placed her short bob wig on her head as I positioned the mask on her face. Suddenly, I felt something squishy. My finger had poked through the hole and jabbed her eyeball. She jumped back, cupping her eye. "Oh, ow, shit," she said. "I think I lost my contact." She opened her eye wide and rolled it around looking for the contact in the mirror. I scanned the table she stood at while dressing, trying to spot a bit of clear plastic, panic gripping me. "Can you still go on without it?" I asked hopefully. "No, I can hardly see at all. I won't have any depth perception." I didn't know she wore contacts, and I certainly didn't know she was almost legally blind without them. Needless to say, chaos ensued as we frantically looked everywhere for the missing contact, the stage tech's shining his flashlight, which was required equipment for the crew, onto the floor and nearby nooks and crannies. "Freddie, can you run to the car? Maybe there's a spare one there," Shannon asked her husband. "Don't you have it in your dressing room?" he asked. "No, I've used them all." She sounded panicked. Freddie sprinted to their vehicle to look, but they did not have an extra set, nor was the missing contact found. The show could not go on. Here's a picture of Shannon and some other cast members. Shannon couldn't possibly do the number without good vision, as her movements were coordinated perfectly with the bar movements, and one misstep would mean she would fall. The show was cut short without the Prince number. I couldn't have felt more terrible. "Oh my God, Shannon, I'm so sorry." "Oh, honey, don't you worry about it," she said. "It was an accident." I was in shock. I single-handedly ruined the show. If I were her, I would hate me, but that was not her nature. The rest of the performers were happy to have a shorter night. Working 2 shows per night, 6 nights a week, left them perpetually exhausted. Even though I got some high fives from the other dancers, I was mortified and couldn't wait to put this bad night behind me. Fortunately, we were getting ready for another show change and a new crop of girls had been hired. These girls were not only extremely beautiful but also talented. But even those ingenues could not knock Shannon off her pedestal. She came to work wearing Coke bottle glasses and the shows were modified for a few days, but as soon as her new contacts were ready, she was back to being the undisputed star of the shows. Alright, that was Chapter 7 of Rhinestone Confidential, my favorite book in the universe. Alright, thanks very much, friends and neighbors, for stopping by, and Don't Do Nothing I Wouldn't Do. We'll read Chapter 8 next time.